Hello, and thanks for joining me on this video today. Our topic of today is going to be on identity, as mentioned in the title. Something that I feel very passionate about, I feel like it's very important within eating disorder recovery that learning about and thinking about identity is very important. So that is the topic of today. So a little bit of context around the idea of identity in recovery. Often people who have struggled with an eating disorder often feel as though they are unsure of their identity, especially if an eating disorder has started off at a young age. Then you've spent a long time being focused around an eating disorder. It takes up a lot of attention, so our attention is focused on the eating disorder rather than developing who we are as a human being. Through adolescent years, those are key vital moments of discovering who you are, and if you spend all of that time being very inward, you're not going to do it. So you get to a point where you're like, okay, who am I then? If I'm not this eating disorder, I'm not these certain characteristics or this way of being, then who am I? Eating disorders often become part of people's identity or almost take over them as a person. So people will resonate with all of the eating disorder behaviours rather than their own behaviours because it has become very habitual, a way of being. When people start recovering, a big question can be, if I lose this eating disorder or all the characteristics that it brings with it, who am I going to be? Who am I without this way of being, without this eating disorder? And that can be a big thing that stops people from recovering, because it's, if I let go of this, what is out there? I think I feel really strongly about this as well, because we need to start pulling away from these eating disorder behaviours and develop these sides of us that are truly us, and that allows us to be more confident in who we are and feel like we can let go of those eating disorder behaviours. So the questions for today are: what are some eating disorder behaviours or characteristics that you have currently? So when I say that, I mean the good, the bad. Just sit down and have a think about what characteristics do you feel like this eating disorder has brought to you. A little bit of a side note, I think as well, I went through a stage of people would say to me, oh, what's the eating disorder's voice? What is the eating disorder saying? And I used to be like, what are you on about? It's me. Like, there's not two sides of me. But the more that I have gone along in my recovery journey, the more that I've identified that there is a separate part of me that is this idea, it is this eating disorder. So in this question, it is about sitting down, thinking about what does this eating disorder bring to you? And it could be good things. Sometimes eating disorders are deemed as only negative, only bad things happening. And they are, deep down they are, but they can bring positive characteristics. There's a reason why people keep on doing things or going along with the eating disorder, because it brings some good things, and it's about identifying what those are. So, first question, what are some eating disorder characteristics that you have? The good and the bad. So the next question is about who do you think you are? So you've just written a list around characteristics based on the eating disorder, but if you were to take that away, who do you think you are? And you will know, as I mentioned in the first video, it's about really tuning out, listening in, and thinking about who am I? And this again can be good and bad. I want you to really go through the good and the bad characteristics. The next question is about who you were as a child. So if you are able to think back that far before pre-eating disorder, if it was kind of in your younger years, can you think before that time, asking people who were around you if that's possible when you were younger, seeing what they say, who were you as a child? I put this question in because I think it's a really vital way of understanding who we are. I feel like children are inherently themselves. Unless something really sort of traumatic happens, children are able to be themselves without all of these societal additions onto them. You are your true self, your core self, without all of these pressures added on or ways of showing up or the masks that we put on. So who were you as a child, and write a bit of a list about that as well. So looking back on the list, I want you to highlight maybe 3 different characteristics that you've identified in that list. And it might be the one in the eating disorder category, the younger child category, or the who I truly am category. And I want you to highlight 3. It can be 3 from one list, 1 from each, 2 on one, 1 on the other. It's entirely up to you. 3 characteristics that you really identify with and you feel like you want to develop and grow into. So once you've identified those 3 characteristics, I want you to write them all out, or think about them, or hold them in your brain, and think about how can I, in each one of these areas, start showing up more like that? How can I develop ways of doing that? So it isn't about just external ways of being, or, you know, if you feel like giving or caring or being kind is a big part of it. It's not just about the charity work or helping other people, and that is key, like that is really important, is doing those external things, but it's also how can I bring that characteristic out in just interactions I have on a daily basis. How can I identify when I show up like that? Often we have these masks that we bring to society or to social interactions, but how can we take off those masks, identify that part in us that is the core self, and show up like that? And the more that you're able to do that, the more we're pulling power away from the eating disorder. I think with these ideas, I also just want to be really real. And sometimes we believe that the only thing to do is to become like the most positive version of ourselves and the best version of ourselves. But there is this balance that we have to accept in life, and that it is about embracing. I got you to write down the negative and the positive sides because they are both part of us. And it's not about, oh, let's just get rid of the negative, bye, like I'm not going to go near there, and just focus on the positive. There is this acceptance that we need to do about these potentially negative sides of ourselves, because they're in everybody. And for me personally, I can be really stubborn. Like, that is a characteristic of me. It's something that I was when I was younger. It's something that really came out with my eating disorder. It's something that I still have today. And although I could deem that as like a really negative side that I want to get rid of, I actually am learning to embrace that side of myself, because, you know, stubbornness, I know what I like, I know what I want to do, and I get things done. I have to temper it sometimes with a bit more humility and a bit more kind of knowledge of like what other people want as well. But that's part of me, and I'm learning to love it. And you need to learn to love those negative and positive sides of yourself, because they're all key in making you who you are. And I guess just to summarise, the reasons that I do these activities, and I feel like identity is a whole long journey that people need to go on, and it's a whole lifelong thing. It's not just like, tick, done, sorted my personality, here I am. It's like this whole long thing. So it's about basically pulling power away from the eating disorder, and it has become a mask that you use to present yourself to the world. So it's scary to think, what happens if I take this away? And if you do, who will I be without it? But by investing in those parts of you, I've said investing 3 million times, but how you invest in that part of you allows you to start pulling power away from the eating disorder, because that is how we are presenting ourselves and being in the world, and start building up these other parts of us, and presenting those and developing and investing in those parts of us, because that's how we can move away from eating disorder behaviours. So let me know what's come up for you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.